Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 1 of the anime series Shouwa Genroku Rakugo Shinjuu. And I was thoroughly captivated and drawn in by this first episode, which was something I figured would be the case having looked at the PV a little while ago now. I was very much drawn into the animation style, the characters, the look of the characters, the period setting that it seemed to be taking place in, although I hadn't read the synopsis at the time, so I had mistaken sort of the focus of the series for being about this cat who's newly out of prison and he has nowhere to go. He has no family, no home to return to. And I thought that it was going to be about him being an aspiring mangaka, manga artist and creator, and he would want to sort of go to this master mangaka artist and you know, seek to be his apprentice and everything like that. Little did I actually realize at the time that it's dealing with the performance art known as rakugo, which is, for all intents and purposes, kind of like a one-man show, a performance art where a single actor sits on a stage and doles out basically what are anything from comedic to dramatic to anecdotal performance scenarios. They tell this grand story and it's the one actor playing multiple roles, usually having characters interacting and bantering back and forth. And it was actually really resoundingly captivating to me to see a full performance, actually a couple full performances on display in this episode. Now, the thing that kind of took me aback, I hadn't realized the first episode was going to be 50 minutes in length. That's 50, not 15, so double the length of a normal anime episode, and this is going to be a 13-episode series. So effectively, if they keep up with that, you're getting 26 episodes in half the time. And if it stays at this quality, damn, I was thoroughly impressed by it. And it's kind of slow and methodical, which I really like. It's kind of a change of pace in its period setting, in the sort of interplay between the characters. Very much does it, involve this cat who's newly out of prison. He has nowhere to go. Although he was inspired in his incarceration by this sort of grand master rakugo performer by the name of Yakumo, this guy who's getting up there in age, kind of ornery, kind of a dick, a little bit. But he was inspired by a performance of this particular play, I guess you could call it a play called Shinigami, which is comedic. It's about, as we see performed in the episode, it's about kind of this burglar who enters this guy's domicile. He has to hide because the guy just comes home, doesn't really have much to steal. And this person whose flat was being robbed realizes they don't have the money for the rent, so they make up all this, bullshizzle story like, oh, well, I was robbed of the money, and then the manager happens to come by, and he's trying to excuse it all, and make excuse after excuse until finally the burglar, who's still hidden on the premises, comes out and is like, you are lying. I didn't take your money. I didn't take your futon. I didn't take your cabinets and all this kind of stuff. And it was just really captivating. It was a story within the story of the actual episode, fully performed in the style of Rakugo. And it had me glued to the screen. And you have, as I say, this guy, Yakumo. The interesting thing about him is, in his ornery nature, he's getting up there in age and being really grouchy and everything. It's surprising to find that he has a young woman living with him who happens to be the daughter of, I guess you could kind of sort of refer to it as a Rakugo rival. Her father was also a performer, and their styles were drastically different, whereas Yakumo's is very much more dramatic and straight-laced. Apparently her father's was a little bit more comedic, a little bit more tongue-in-cheek. And, the main character, who has just gotten out of prison, Yotaro, he's given the nickname Yotaro. I don't know what his real name is, but it's kind of like, calling him a fool, calling him an idiot. But that's his nickname for all intents and purposes, and he adopts it as his own in his performance. But he is more adaptable toward her father's sort of style of performance, and this is really rubbing Yakumo the wrong way. He's the kind of guy who hasn't wanted to take any sort of apprentice or anything like that, but you have Yotaro begging and pleading with him, being unwilling to take no for an answer, and convincing him to let him move in and everything. And you get the sense that Yakumo's only just sort of biding his time and think he's going to get some laughs out of this. But the interesting thing is, Yotaro actually does have a passion for this. He's been really thoroughly inspired and touched. That flame of creativity was erupted within him, and you can kind of see, speculatively, like all that time, all of his days in being incarcerated, that's probably something that got him through, the idea of being a performer, of being someone who could create magic on a stage. Even though he does sort of tiptoe on eggshells, it's not something, it's something brand new to him. And he's not as resounding necessarily as somebody who's been doing it for decades like Yakumo. But he does have a natural sort of skill that is put forth when he does his onstage performance, and does it in the style of this girl's father's style, her name being Konatsu. She's very sort of tomboyish, and they don't get along from right off the bat. She doesn't even really get along with Yakumo, the old man. And there's tension there because I guess because of this period setting, it's kind of harkening back to that Shakespearean element of onstage performances where a woman can't fit into that equivalent. It's kind of like the kabuki thing where it was all male performers before, the coming of age aspect of women being able to enter the performance arts. It just wasn't done. It wasn't accepted. And yet she spends so much of her time going over her father's performances, trying to learn it and master it, so that she can be a performer in her own right. And at one point, it's really captivating because she puts on the entirety of the performance of this play Shinigami, for Yotaro. And it's something that much more, and flares this whole idea of being captivated by this style of performance within him. And again, on stage, he's really nervous for the first time during his first performance. And he kind of falls back on his haunches and starts mimicking from the outset the entirety of how, Konatsu had performed this for him in the style of her father. And at first she's taken aback. Like, you're stealing something from me, from my lineage, from my heritage. Yet there is this turn in the crowd, because this also coincides with the fact, he was a criminal. There's reason why he was incarcerated, why he was in prison. And the boss man, this gangster Yakuza type of guy, comes a call, and he's like, what are you doing messing around with child's play here, this Rakugo? It's a waste of time. Come back to a life of crime. Put your life on the line for me. Start carrying a gun around. We're going to really rip this place up. And he doesn't want to give in to it. He actually has the courage to deny this boss man guy, I'm not going back to that life. But it takes actually Yakumo coming in and interrupting the scene and saying, back off, for all intents and purposes. This kid has talent. Why don't you come to the performance and see for yourself? And the tide turning within this performance, as the performance itself is captivating in and of itself, again, this full performance of the Shinigami, they keep cutting to the crowd. They cut to, Yakuma. They cut to this boss man. And surprisingly, this boss man guy, he's getting into it. He's like, yeah, it's kind of because it's dealing with the criminal element and making things up on the spur of the moment. And that's kind of, the emphasis, doing something off the top of your head in the spur of the moment, but it kind of sort of works out. The boss man guy's impressed enough that he's like, all right, whatever. And he leaves. He leaves well enough alone. The problem, though, is in the next performance, once this is all done, and you see this has kind of rubbed Yakuma the wrong way, because he wants to pass on, as we find, as a revelation toward the end of the episode. He's very much concerned with passing this style of performance art on to another generation. And with his playful adversarial rival that is, Konatsu's father being gone. Apparently he died in some sort of horrific accident, or maybe something dealing with the criminal element. We don't really know. Konatsu's actually questioning this woman, about it. And she doesn't want to explain anything about the scenario with the father. But that sense of loss is very heavy on her shoulders. And there's this mutual, it's a very interesting parallel in their butting heads, Konatsu and Yakumo, but they're both coming from this with sort of the foundation being, we want to see this performance art, this style of performance art, this rakugo, carry on in some aspect. And it's like Yotaro who kind of bridges the gap between them. But then, as I say, when you have the next performance, and he's kind of, the opening act, if you will, for Yakumo's, act, at one point he's so exhausted from his performing, from his studying, and, going over rehearsal after rehearsal and trying to nail it down, he actually falls asleep during Yakumo's performance and is snoring behind the stage like really loud, and Yakumo makes this part of his performance, but he really feels slighted. Like, this kid doesn't really respect the material the way I do. He's much more in tune with, Konatsu's father's style, and maybe he should focus on that. He's not really respecting my style, so F him. I'm going to leave him be, and he kind of casts him out. And you see, because, of course, Yotaro has nowhere to go, he's gone back to Yakumo's digs, and he's kind of freezing outside. It's wintertime and everything, and Konatsu comes up, and she's actually now extending the olive branch. Like, while they were adversarial at first, she's gained a new respect for him, a newfound respect in his appreciation of her father's performance style, of his love for this performance art that is the rakugo, and she then bridges the gap of sort of reunification between Yotaro and Yakumo by the end of the episode. And the interesting thing is, that's where you get that reveal, as I was saying, where effectively, Yakumo is putting forth, look, you're going to study. You're going to make me these 3 promises. You're going to study until you know both of these styles. You're going to try your best by becoming as familiar as you can with these styles, of finding your own performance style. It's not going to be mimicry. You're not going to make your bread and butter by either doing it her father's way or my way. But the emphasis has to be that you respect this art, you understand what it is, and you make it your life, you make it your own. And that idea of legacy, like, these are 3 characters who aren't getting along, but they all want the same thing. They all have at the root of their souls this creative juice that just, it's what ties them together and binds them together. And we leave off by the end of this, as I say, it's a kind of a lengthy, slow, methodical, episode with, again, just captivating, sort of entertaining value to it through the performances of these rakugo pieces. You leave off with the aspect that Yakumo is now going to relate in a performance style the agreement that he and Konatsu's father made in years past, that saw them getting into this, that saw them becoming rivals. And it's just really captivating because there's an underwritten ominous tone that there is still this criminal involvement, this gangland involvement from, whatever put Yotaro behind bars, the boss man's coming looking for him, whatever may have played into Konatsu's father's death. And it seems like there is some regret. I mean, at one point, Konatsu actually points a finger at Yakumo and says, "You are responsible for his death." What does that mean? Is she just blaming him because they were rivals? Does she know something or suspect something more, that maybe this guy actually did, make a dirty deal that led to her father's death? It does seem like there's a certain aspect of his own nature that he feels guilty for it. So already, there are so many different layers to these character dynamics, from their mutual interest and love and fascination and passion for this rakugo performance art, but also all the surrounding nature. It's heartbreaking to think that Konatsu, for all of the time she's spending learning these pieces and learning her father's art and, making it her own, she holds very little hope of ever being able to be a performer, even though that's her strongest desire. Like I say, it's a very heartbreaking equation, but much as, Yakumo by the end sees a passing on of the torch in Yotaro, she kind of is seeing that too. And she's like vying for him, she's vying for Yakumo to take Yotaro back. And make a partnership, make an apprenticeship to pass on this performance art. And in a way, it's kind of their, again, as they're adversarial enough as they are, it's kind of their mutual bond of passing on this torch together of two different styles and making, hopefully, a burgeoning style within Yotaro himself. Make him find whatever it is he needs to be to make this his own. And so, just wow. Like, I didn't, like, when I saw the episode length, I didn't know if I'd be able to get through it. And I could not stop watching. It felt like it went by like a whirlwind. Like, by the time it was over, I was like, whoa, that's it? It's twice as long as a regular anime episode, and by the end, I'm like, that's all? I gotta wait till next week? Damn it! You know, like, it was just really captivating. It was a really beautiful, melodic in certain ways. I mean, there is certain, you know, music cues and everything like that, but I'm not talking about the music, even though that was complimentary to the performances and the story. But there was something melodic about the structure. It felt like a 3-act structure within an episode. You know, like the introductions, the actual learning the piece and then performing it. And everything goes awry toward the end, but then comes back together in a very heartfelt, heartening fashion. And it was really rewarding. It was really a rewarding watch that isn't the typical fast-paced, overly action-oriented, you know, kind of anime. I mean, I can see from right off the bat, quite frankly, this not being everyone's cup of tea. And it just really hit me in all the right ways, all the right places, to the point where I feel almost emotional. Because, I mean, you get a lot of times in anime, you know, that emphasis on people desire to be a famous mangaka. They want to make, you know, just resounding works of art in their own right, yes. But I mean, I like the sort of, for lack of a better term, old school, dated feel of this particular kind of performance art. It feels like something, you know, you'd go to YouTube videos this day and age to experience this kind of thing, whereas it's still very much in the confines of the template of this world. It's still a you know, vivacious, vibrant thing. It's in the here and now. This is a thing people desire to see, much as people are going out to see Star Wars The Force Awakens this day and age. This was a performance art that people clamored to see, you know, especially in the case of Yakumo, to see this performance from this master performer. And that's captivating. That's something that's highly intriguing to me. Like, just the look, the feel, the vibe. It was expressive, it was exciting, and it was captivating. And so I couldn't more highly recommend this. I don't know if I'm going to be coming back for weekly reviews, episodic coverage. Remains to be seen. Time will tell, depending on what time I have available to me. But I would love to hear from you guys in the comments below if you're going to check this out, if you have any interest in it at all. And if you have checked it out, love it or hate it, anything goes in the comments below. Let me know what you thought of it. And, you know, if you were as captivated and moved as I was by it, if you feel like it's not your cup of tea, you know, like I say, I can see it not being everyone's. So, yeah, I'd love to hear from you, have that discussion. And otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well. And I'll catch you all later. Peace.